I was thinking about a way to quantify what we're talking about tonight, Nate. And I think that this position could give you the best value in every round of the draft
Ooh.
because there's an abundance of talent here. There's a lot of teams that need this position desperately or that would upgrade their backups, rendering what backups they had into high-end backups. So I think there's going to be guys that could possibly be hits in every round. Now, don't come at me if you have an 8-round rookie draft because then all bets are off, okay? You know exactly what I'm talking about. But hey, we're talking about early off-season running back rankings. We're going to be ranking 5 through 1. We're wiping back to front today with these rankings, the proper way to do it. But before we get into it, I do have a quick discussion question that I thought of today. Nate, would you say that this is a generational running back class compared to previous classes that we have covered? So we're starting in, we'll say, the 2020 season when you came on board. So from then until now, how would you rank this compared to those classes? I know it's hard. There's no context here as far as guys being on an NFL field. They haven't played a snap. They're not even on a team yet. But from a scouting perspective, what do you think? I know I'm throwing you for a loop here.
Yeah, I'm trying to take a look and go find all of the players that were drafted in the 2020 draft because, that was the first year that I was here with the Dynasty Rewind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be hard to overcome that draft class. I mean, that had Jonathan Taylor in it, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift. I know that I'm missing at least 3 other impact players off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So that was a really good draft class. And we felt really good about that draft class as we were getting into it, as we were watching them, as we were watching the draft unfold. That was a really good draft class. I don't know if it's generational or not. Maybe the last generational class before that, I believe, was like the CMC draft class. There's a ton of really good long-term veteran running backs who are in that draft class as well. So maybe it's like every 5 years we get a class like this because I think this class is pretty comparable to the Jonathan Taylor class, to the CMC class. If you want to pull up when that CMC class was, I believe like Aaron Jones was in that class along with a couple other players who've been in the NFL for quite a while. But I was starting to look back at my rankings of the last couple classes.
2017, by the way.
2017. Okay. Yeah. And looking at my rankings, I don't think I have as many players at the top as I did in the 2020 draft class with Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, many of those players. But I think that this class is deeper in the 3rd, 4th rounds, in those mid rounds. This class is very, very deep, where I feel like even in the 5th round, you're getting a player that could have possibly been a end of the 3rd round pick last year in last year's class. I think there's that much talent in the depth of this class. And we are really lucky that a lot of guys didn't go back to college. It kind of worked out where a lot of players went back to college last year, which set them up to really not have an option to go back this year. And we are going to reap the benefits of that. And that's really, if you really want to dive into why that happened that way, it's because of NIL in college football has really changed the game for running backs. We're going to see a lot more running backs come out after 4 years rather than 3 years because they know that they're not going to make a lot of money in the NFL, unfortunately. They're going to make more money as a running back in college than they are in the NFL for their first couple of years.
Yeah.
So, with the talent and the veteran talent that's in this class, I don't know if it's generational or not, but it is really deep. And I'm really excited to see what kind of players we can get in the 2nd round, the 3rd round. We just started doing a couple mock drafts in the Patreon just this week because Sleeper added the rookies. And not all of them are in there yet. But, man, I was picking up my RB3 in the mid-2nd, and I know that's not going to last. But there's a lot of talent that's dropping to the late 2nd, early 3rd once again.
And if you want to mock with us, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. You could also come in and hang out for a week for free. It's on me. And you know what? Looking at the NFL landscape before we get into it, there's teams that need running backs or could use an upgrade to their backup. Just bring up our lads that has all the teams here. The Bills, maybe they want to, you could find a better player than Ray Davis.
Come on, Ray Davis is
I'm
good.
just saying, the Dolphins, maybe Raheem Mostert moves on. I know Jalen Wright is there. The Patriots, Antonio Gibson's behind Ramondre Stevenson. The Jets, you got a new coach coming in. Breece Hall's there, but maybe Braylon Allen's not his guy. The Ravens could use a solid backup behind Derrick Henry.
I can see the Ravens drafting somebody.
The Bengals could pair somebody with Chase Brown. The Browns have needs at almost every position. The Steelers do not have a starting running back right now. Jalen Warren's a restricted free agent. Najee Harris, free agent. Texans could use a good backup behind Mixon. The Colts are a question mark. The Jaguars, another question mark there. The Titans, they have a good duo. The Broncos, I don't think Audric Estime is the guy.
No, and I believe Sean Payton said that he's going to have a running back committee moving forward anyway. So,
and I don't think Javonte Williams might be there. The Chiefs could use an upgrade over Pacheco. Hunt's going to be almost 30. The Raiders, glaring need. The Chargers have a need. And then going to the
there's a lot of
NFC,
teams.
the Dallas Cowboys, they need a running back badly. The New York
Can't wait to
Giants,
see Najee Harris in the silver.
the Giants look, we like Tyrone Tracy, but easily replaceable. The Eagles, I think Kenneth Gainwell moves on. You have Saquon. After him, it's only Will Shipley, so a good high-end backup would be nice there. The Commanders are an interesting spot too, Nate. Brian Robinson did not have his best year. Austin Eckler's getting older. The Bears have actually a pretty loaded depth chart at running back. The Lions, I'd say
I will say one thing on the Bears. I don't know if I expect DeAndre Swift to be on the Bears by the end of the offseason. If you remember, they weren't really happy with him in Detroit. They were pretty excited to get rid of him. And now Ben Johnson comes over from Detroit. I don't know if Ben Johnson himself is a DeAndre Swift fan. That's something we will find out over the next coming months.
Yeah, that could have been a head coach thing too. The Packers are another spot. If they're not convinced on Marshawn Lloyd, the Vikings is a good spot for a starting running back. And then in the South, the Falcons, they got Bijan, they're good. The Panthers, I think they might be okay. The Saints, Kendra Miller, what are we doing with him? The Bucks, they might be okay with what they have. The
good.
Cardinals are maybe. The Rams, there's a guy that I'm talking about who I'd actually love to see get drafted to the Rams. Bit of a spoiler. The Niners, this guy would also be good on the Niners too. CMC gets hurt a lot. And then to top it all off, the Seahawks. They're a question mark as well. Maybe they want to open the passing game through the running back position there.
That's what we got Zach Charbonnet for, man.
Yeah, and Kenny McIntosh is there as well, who's actually a better receiving back than Zach Charbonnet, in my opinion. But Nate, let's start with your number 5 running back. Who, what, where, why?
At one point, this guy might have been considered the RB1 of the draft class. Quinshon Judkins, running back from Ohio State. When he was at Ole Miss his freshman year, he had an incredible year, was the SEC Freshman of the Year. He had 1,500 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns. What an incredible freshman year. Was first team All SEC as a freshman. Was first team All SEC as a sophomore. And then decided to transfer to Ohio State to have a chance in the national championship. Worked out pretty well for him. They did win it just this year. But Quinshon Judkins, not my RB1, not my RB2. He's my RB5. Mm-hmm. And part of that is because we have a really good class. But also, I have to say, like many other people that I have talked to on Twitter or seen, I was a little disappointed with the film with Quinshon Judkins.
Interesting.
And it's not necessarily that anything was glaringly bad, but for the production that he has put up through his career, I felt like the film was just a little disappointing, where you can see with Quinshon, good athleticism, but not an elite athlete, not as athletic as his teammate, Treveyon Henderson, who I know we'll be talking about a little bit later. He kind of hits that top gear pretty quick. He can't finish off the long runs. And, that might be a moot point. How many times does an NFL running back actually get past the second level, 20-something yards on the field with a chance to break it for 50, 60 yards? Not that often. So it's not a huge deal. But I did feel like, there was something to be desired with his athleticism. We'll see how the testing comes out. When it comes to actually running the ball, I think Quinshon Judkins does pretty great. He has good vision. He's very patient behind the line of scrimmage, especially when he's going to be pushed outside. He waits until the very last minute to push that outside. He's not going to go early outside and let the linebackers beat him to the corner. He's going to wait till the last second and then push it outside, which I saw in multiple plays. He knows how to read the linebackers and manipulate them. So he's got good vision, got good patience. He runs really well in between the tackles, I did think. And he's got good but not great power. And I think this is another place where I was a little disappointed. 6 foot, 220 pounds for Judkins there. And, someone who's been very physical throughout his career. But once again, I think the physicality and the power that he showed was, good, great, but not elite. And in this draft class, it's very competitive at the top. So all those things to be considered. He's a decent receiver. I don't think he's a plus receiver in any way. So I think that kind of brings his versatility down a little bit, especially once again compared to his teammate, Treveyon Henderson, who is a bit more of a better pass catcher and more versatile. But I will say, one thing Judkins definitely has going for him is his contact balance. He's hard to bring down. He's got a good stiff arm. He is stocky for sure. So I do think Judkins will be a good NFL running back, but I have him at RB5 right now. I think he's, not quite up to the same level as some of these other guys in the class, despite the great career that he had in college.
For me at number 5, I have Kaleb Johnson. So there's some things that I do like about Kaleb Johnson, but some things that I think kind of bumps him down the list a little bit. He's an upright runner. I'd like to see him get his pad level a little bit lower. Typically a one-cut runner, but he does have very fluid lateral movements. He's a decent receiver. Iowa doesn't really pass to the backs a ton, but his yak game could be a little bit lacking at time. It's almost like he gets confused after he catches the ball. Maybe he's not expecting it. It is Iowa, after all. Does have a good initial burst, controls his speed well situationally, and has fantastic stop-start ability. He's a well-balanced guy and physical, but sometimes I wonder if he's a product of Iowa's offensive line. If you watch the film on him, there are times where Iowa's offensive line has the opposing defensive line 5 yards down the field before Kaleb Johnson's even back to where the line of scrimmage started. That being said, he's strong. His feet never stop moving, which is huge for a running back. He can move the pile a little bit, breaks arm tackles easily. So this is a guy who I don't know where he's going to be. Maybe like an early day, maybe like a late day 2, early day 3 guy. So interested to see
reasonable.
Where he lands. Ever since they went to Thursday, I still get confused on which day is what. Like third round, that's late day 2. Okay, cool. So yeah, I have Kaleb Johnson at number 5. Nate, do you want to move? Oh, you wanted to
actually? I just want to touch on Kaleb Johnson because I don't have him in my top 5. I did enjoy the film with Kaleb Johnson. I actually had Kaleb Johnson ranked pretty high during the season because he was performing really, really well, and I feel like no one was talking about him at the time.
Right.
But getting into the film with Kaleb Johnson, I also have him graded out kind of the same way as you do, like a late day 2 pick, early day 3 pick. So I certainly don't, think he's a bad running back at all. But I think one thing with Kaleb is he doesn't offer a lot of creativity as a runner. And I think that's really important in today's NFL. I think Kaleb Johnson's a bit more of a gap runner where, if the offensive line is good and going to create holes for him, he's going to take advantage. He's got good speed. He's got great size at 6', 225. He's got a great size speed combo there. So you give him a little bit of space and he's going to take it. But I think the lack of creativity behind the line of scrimmage and the ability to, make something out of nothing when his blocks aren't there, kind of hold him back from taking that next step up.
Okay.
So yeah, I like the Kaleb Johnson mention. I actually had him as my honorable mention, and then I saw that you were going to talk about him, so I wanted to make sure I still got to talk about him a little bit.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. I added someone else's honorable mention, so we're good.
All right, you want to move to your number 4, Nate?
I would love to. All right, so I know I'm a little bit lower on this guy than you are. Spoiler alert. But I still am pretty excited about Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. This guy also has really good size. We got a lot of big running backs in this class, Mike. 6'1", 220. And Omarion Hampton over the last 2 years has run for over 3,000 yards at North Carolina and been honestly one of the biggest pieces of that offense, especially this year with Drake May leaving. There wasn't really a lot there in North Carolina, yet he still ran for over 1,600 yards, 15 rushing touchdowns, and 38 receptions for 372 yards. I mean, when you lose an NFL quarterback and you still put up similar numbers to the year that you had that NFL quarterback, if not better, that shows a lot of improvement, shows a lot of ability to carry that offense. I like that about Omarion Hampton. And he's also got the body type to, take carries into the third, fourth quarter and be that main focus for the offense. Another guy who's got pretty good athleticism, doesn't quite have that long speed. He's a little bit bigger guy, but Omarion Hampton does move very well for his size. I thought his quickness and agility was impressive for the size that he does have on his frame. Good patience, does not force plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's got busy feet, which give him a lot of ability to change plans behind the line of scrimmage if things don't go very well. But one thing I really liked about his running was how he navigated in between the tackles. He's very patient on inside runs. He gets skinny very well, and he really trusts his eyes. with, when those gaps open up, he doesn't hesitate and he can take advantage of those. Like I said, a good receiver. I don't think he was, super above average, super plus in that, but he handled a lot of receiving work in college. So that he can do it. And then kind of similar to Quinshon Judkins, another guy that has really, really impressive contact balance, plays with really good leverage at the point of contact. And, arm tackles are consistently losing against Omarion Hampton. He's consistently shrugging those off. Now, not very elusive. He's not going to make a lot of people kind of whiff, but he does very well in open traffic to navigate and set up his blocks. So a guy that you also did very well, obviously at the goal line with his 15 rushing touchdowns, does well in short yardage situations. So Omarion Hampton, RB4 for me, but a guy I'm very excited about, and certainly will be a day 2 pick.
So we both have the same player next. You just have him one spot ahead of me, but my number 4, we could just kind of combine here if you want, Nate. Devin Neal from Kansas. I'll kick it off. He cuts and moves the open field are fantastic. Doesn't have a ton of wasted movements too. A lot of times you'll see a running back, he'll get up to a guy and he'll keep shifting back and forth trying to juke him out. Devin Neal is very decisive with where he wants to go and where he wants to put his body, and he just does it. Smooth runner with good vision. He sees holes well, but he's also patient enough to let things open up for him. One knock is I think he's strong but not overly powerful. He can brush off weaker contact, but is unlikely to move a pile or a larger defensive lineman, which there will be a lot of in the NFL. Then again, hey, these guys, they're going to be in a professional program now. They're going to be in the weight room more than in school. I mean, in school, we know that these guys aren't really in school to go to school. But that being said, I do think he has above average short and long speed as well. So I like him in a 10-yard window, but he does have some decent breakaway speed as well. Would you like to touch on who is your number 3 running back, Devin Neal? Anything you want to add to that, Nate?
I would absolutely love to. Quite honestly, Devin Neal might be the player I'm most excited about outside of Ashton Jeanty.
Okay.
Currently my RB3, but maybe even RB1 in my heart. I just love watching Devin Neal. And Mike, you hit it right on the head. He doesn't have a lot of wasted movement. And watching him run the ball for Kansas was kind of remarkable because he is so good with small movements. He is juking people out. He's making people miss, but he's doing it with a shrug of the shoulder, a slight hesitation move. He's not overextending himself. He's not being dramatic with his moves. He doesn't have to, take a full step, a full stride to the right to get someone to go that way before he goes left. No, he's just making the smallest little movements, but he just knows how to do it at the right time with the right amount of acceleration that he is opening up his own running lanes. And that kind of creativity with such small amount of wasted movement is just so professional. He looks like a pro player. This is a player that we were both upset went back to college last year. But at this point, I remember saying last year, oh, Devin Neal's going back to college. He'll be lucky to be a top 5 RB this year. He could have been RB1 in the 2024 class. Well, he's not lucky to be an top 5 RB this year. He is the RB3 for me, and I think easily a top 3 RB in this draft class, as good as it is.
Yeah, and he earned being that top 5 running back too. Look, 1,262 yards last year, career high in touchdowns, 16 touchdowns. He's also a decent receiving back too. On his career, 76 receptions for 697 yards. And let's see, it does not give me touchdowns on here. PFF, receiving touchdowns for some reason, unless I
believe he had 4 total, 1 each year.
Okay, well, there you go. And only 4 career fumbles too. And that's on, let's see, 730 carries.
Yeah, he's good in pass protection.
He is.
He's not the biggest guy, though he comes in at 215. But he's still got good contact balance. He can drag some players. He can move the pile. I was so impressed watching Devin Neal. I like I said, coming into the scouting reports, I was thinking, okay, Devin Neal is going to be a fringe top 5 guy. I'll probably have him ranked like RB6, RB7. And I was just so impressed by the film, by what he was able to do. He's good at all 3 levels of the field. I think you said something like that. He really trusts his blockers. He knows how to navigate traffic really, really well. And his patience might be the best patience in the class, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's not just behind the line of the scrimmage. It's also at the second level. And was also like at some point I thought I was going to get frustrated because he was moving slow at the second level, but he's just so good at, navigating the traffic and setting up his blockers and finding space and being able to manipulate at the second level that it worked for him. And that's just really impressive, to be honest.
Yeah, one thing I'm incorporating into my scouting, especially with running backs too, is vision at all three levels. You'll see that on my scouting reports too, because it's one thing at the line, but you have to be able to know where your blockers are going to be setting up for you downfield. And then the second level, the linebackers, the third level, obviously the defensive backs. So that's really important. And he excels in all three of those areas. So definitely some stock up on Devin Neal. All right, Nate, let's get to my number 3 running backs. I'm cheating here.
You are kind
I'm
of annoying me, but
combining.
you got it.
It's a 3A and 3B situation, or 3A and 3AA, however you want to look at it. I bundled the Ohio State running back tandem together, and I have Quinshon Judkins and Treveyon Henderson here together. I wanted to rank them both here, so I did. It's a good thing about having my own podcast. People always say, hey, you want to talk about it? Do it. So I'm doing it. I wish we could combine these guys to make one running back. There's your running back one.
Sure.
Judkins has the power. Henderson has the speed and the elusiveness. They're both above average pass catchers, but Henderson's pass catching borderlines on elite. He's not a dump off guy. I mean, he obviously can do dump offs and screens and stuff like that, but there's a lot of times where Ohio State had him out, split out wide, off the tight end. I think I saw a couple times, and he's running routes and catching the ball down the field. So he's a fantastic player. Judkins is more of your prototypical, um, check down screen guy, but he catches the ball well in stride. He's not a liability in the passing game. Where I think the main difference is, if you're a team, Quinshon Judkins, you give him 20 to 25 carries. He can wear defense down. He can grind a game out.
Yep.
Treveyon Henderson's not that guy, but he has a better burst and he can still break. He gets real skinny through the line and he could just break away long runs. Judkins is unlikely to do that at the next level, but he can. So, for me, I think Judkins can project to be a team's running back 1 and a running back 2 in fantasy. But for me, Henderson, he's a high-end NFL backup with flex upside. And this is a guy that I was saying would be great in a Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay system. I think the systems that they run would really emphasize his traits well. I'd love to see him go somewhere like that. And Judkins is a guy you could put in pretty much any system,
Yeah.
grind it out. He could be the next Steelers starting running back for all we know.
It could be. He probably put up similar numbers to Najee, to be honest.
On less carries.
Are you good for me to go ahead and get to my RB2?
It kind of,
Because it flows right in. My RB2 is
Yeah.
Treveyon Henderson.
Okay.
Who I think is very explosive, athletically, certainly. One of the better athletes in this class of the running back position. He's got that long speed. He's got that quickness and burst at the line of scrimmage. He's got the agility to make people miss, the side steps, the spin move that he has. He's got a lot in his repertoire athletically. I don't think he's quite as good of a pure runner as Quinshon Judkins, but he is still a plus runner, both inside and outside. And with his athleticism, he doesn't have to worry about, having to make up for anything with his running ability. And not just the athleticism, which is so important for Treveyon Henderson, but Treveyon Henderson from the get-go has been a very physical runner. His true freshman year, one of the best true freshman years that we've seen for Ohio State in the Big Ten, 1,200 rushing yards, had 15 rushing touchdowns at 6.8 yards per carry, added another 27 receptions and 4 touchdowns through the air. So 19 total touchdowns as a true freshman for Ohio State. Really didn't have quite the same success over the last 3 years, whether it was due to injury or the fact that this past year he was sharing the backfield with Quinshon Judkins. But Treveyon Henderson, the power that he provides at the running back position, I know, we get excited about his receiving ability, his speed, his ability to break off big runs. But what I really like about him is the fact that he can do everything at a high level. And he's willing to lay down the boom on defenders. There's been plays in the past where, he's maybe hurt himself with that physicality. He's also hurt defenders with that physicality. And I think he was able to kind of bring that back a little bit this year. I think you're right when you say like Quinshon Judkins can get like 25 carries, maybe up to 30 touches, including a couple checkdowns and things like that. Treveyon Henderson's probably more like 15 to 20 touches a game. But in those 15 or 20 touches, I think you could get more fantasy points than those 25 to 30 touches for Quinshon Judkins because of the receiving ability, because of the explosiveness, because of the yards after contact that he can create. He does not go down easy, and he's a playmaker through both the ground and the air. I really like Treveyon Henderson. I think he checks just about all the boxes for me. And with the upside that he provides, I think he has that ability to be that top 12 running back on a seasonal basis.
Interestingly enough, Treveyon Henderson has not had a 100-yard rushing game since November 18th, 2023.
Yet he averaged 6.9 yards per attempt this year. They honestly didn't give him the ball a ton. They gave it I don't know exactly what the backfield split was, but it was pretty heavily in the favor of Quinshon Judkins.
It was.
With Ohio State this year.
Yeah, he did have 94 yards rushing against Oregon, though, in all fairness. So the last time they played Oregon. So.
Also, fun thing for Quinshon Judkins. Treveyon Henderson, who has 564 carries. He only has one fumble.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That is pretty good.
But you think about it, too, when people are constantly chasing you.
Makes it a little bit easier.
All right, let's talk about my running back, too, and that's Omarion Hampton. And I think the best word to describe Omarion Hampton, I know you're lower on him, Nate. It's okay. It's okay to disagree.
Not too much.
Relentless. Just the way he goes about the game of football. He's physical. He's a relentless runner. He moves the pile. He moves guys out of the way. He's extremely difficult to bring down. It's also a little bit faster than I expected, given his size. I expected, you look at his height-weight combo, which you said before that I've already forgotten because I'm going to be 40 by the time you guys are listening to this. I expected kind of like a little bit of a plodding back, maybe just kind of whatever, but faster than I expected. Also for his size, he gets skinny through the hole. You've seen guys in the past, Trent Richardson, come on up. They hit the hole. They just hit it broad-shouldered. No, not this new era of running back. They are able to manipulate, move their body, get skinny through the line. Another one-cut runner, but he has sufficient lateral movements and a nasty stiff arm. If you're not going to get out of his way, he's going to get you out of his way. As far as receiving goes, I thought he was a smooth, natural receiver, but after the catch, I thought he was a little inconsistent and indecisive at times. So not a liability, but not his strength, in my opinion. I do think, however, he's a high day 2 pick, and he does have the potential to be a 3-down NFL back. If he goes obviously this is the easy spot, but if he went to the Dallas Cowboys, he's their starter from day one, but they'll sign, who's a broken down old running back?
Bring back Zeke one more time.
Is Aaron Jones is an unrestricted free agent?
I think so.
I believe. Yeah, they could sign him.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. And then a UDFA behind him and be all in.
Yeah, actually, Omarion Hampton and Aaron Jones would not be a bad little 1-2 punch veteran rookie. Well, we both have the same RB1. Well, coming into the season, I said Ashton Jeanty is probably the best receiving back in college football right now. And this guy's going to be a great receiving back at the next level. He only had 23 receptions this year, Mike, for 138 yards and 1 touchdown. So he didn't really get to show off his receiving ability, but that's okay because he ran for, 2,600 yards. So, he not only, I was like, oh, this guy's a really good receiving back. And then he was like, well, I'm also an incredible running back. I can kind of do everything. In 2023, we did see him have 44 receptions for 578 yards. That's really impressive. Anytime you have a running back with over 10 yards per catch, I'm impressed. And he did that very well in 2023. And then he showed us up with 6.9 yards per attempt, 29 rushing touchdowns in 2024. I mean, this guy was just insane this year. Obviously, the Heisman runner-up, won a ton of awards, unanimous consensus All-American, won the Doak Walker Award for best running back in the nation. So very awarded running back now at this point going into the draft. Probably a first-round pick, I would suspect. And when I turned on the film, I saw a lot of what I already saw throughout the year. Great athleticism. He's got a long list of big touchdowns that he ran for, 60-plus yards. He's definitely able to finish off those home run threat kind of runs. Doesn't have any issues getting around the corner, beating defenders at any level. I mean, he had an incredible game against Oregon early in the year, so it's not like he was just beating up on Mountain West Conference opponents the entire year, especially when those Mountain West Conference opponents knew that the ball was going to Ashton Jeanty, and he was still able to put up such big runs, create such explosiveness. Great ability to swim up the offensive line. He's got that patience behind the line of scrimmage. He's going to trust his defense. I mean, his blockers from the defense. And if the hole's not there, he's going to start to bounce it outside, but not too quick. So very impressive with his patience, his ability to hesitate behind the line of scrimmage to freeze linebackers and open up those big explosive runs. That's something he did really, really well. We'll see if that translates to the next level. As I said earlier, a good receiver. He's got great hands transitions from the catch very well. Sets a good base, has good pass protection as well. Really checks a lot of boxes from the receiving back ability. But the most impressive thing about Ashton Jeanty is his contact balance and the physicality that he provides on the football field. And I mean, he had more yards after contact, I believe, than anyone else had rushing yards, except for possibly maybe Omarion Hampton. I think had plenty of rushing yards himself, but his rushing yards after contact was pretty incredible this year, and just constantly. If it was hit behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage, a couple yards after the line of scrimmage, was constantly breaking off 5-10 more yards on those runs. It took 3 or 4 people to bring him down. A lot of times he's getting tackled out of bounds and he's still standing up. A lot of those plays, you have 3 guys trying to gang tackle him. They end up pushing him out of bounds. They all fall off of him and he's still standing there with the football. I mean, this guy's a scary guy to line up against if you're the opposing defense. The balance, the flexibility makes him slippery. And at the end of the day, just one of the best compact runners that I've seen in quite a while. And I'm really excited to see how this translates to the next level. He's got, not the biggest guy out there, but he's got good size, 5'9", 215. He's, like I said, compact, stocky, and that really helps him with that lower center of gravity and how much power he brings to the table. He's really hard to take down. And I think that is going to translate to the next level because he's just that good. Like, he is head and shoulders above a lot of these other running backs.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add to that as far as the film goes, but I'll just throw some stats out here for you for this past season. Obviously, he led the NCAA in rushing yards. He was 890 yards ahead of the second place running back, which was Cam Scatabo. And he was 1,001 yards ahead of the third place running back, which is Omarion Hampton. So, he's amazing. And yet oddly, rushing yards per attempt, he was 9th with 7. AJ Turner from Marshall was first with 8.3. And the only other person on this list, the list that we made tonight, that's ahead of him is Treveyon Henderson at 7.1.
All right.
So, and he's also second in NCAA in rushing touchdowns. Do you know who the first was?
I absolutely should, but I don't. 29 rushing touchdowns.
You're not going to guess that it's Bryson Daly from Army.
Yeah,
the service academies like to screw things up for you. But he was also first in total scrimmage yards, 2,739, which is about 423 yards ahead of Cam Scatabo. And he did lead the NCAA as well in plays from scrimmage, so just overall plays with 397.
He touched the ball a lot.
Yeah, which is about 59 ahead of Cam Scatabo. And then Omarion Hampton, there he is again, third place, 319. So got some guys on this list that I think are going to be good.
Mike, that actually brings up something else I wanted to mention. An elite trait of Ashton Jeanty is his stamina as a runner.
Yes.
This is not a guy that slows down at the end of the game in the fourth quarter, and he handles a ton of touches. Yeah. And you would think someone with his size would not be able to handle 30-plus touches a game, but he had no problem doing it for Boise State this year. And at the end of the game, he was wearing down the defense and taking advantage of them the way that we see guys like Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry do it. So Ashton Jeanty just continuously impressing me, continuously impressing everyone, and I fully expect him to be a first-round pick this year.
Yeah, and not bad for only being 5'9".
Yeah.
For sure. So Ashton Jeanty. Oh, and if you do plan on watching film on Ashton Jeanty, you could discredit the Penn State game that they played in the playoffs. Penn State just had a really good defensive scheme for him.
Yeah.
So, He still had one really nice breakaway run, though. Nate, before we head out, do you want to do some quick honorable mentions?
Yeah, real quick. Want to mention Cam Scatterbo, who you mentioned real quickly, was really, really impressive this year for Arizona State, was a large part of that offense, and I believe had over 1,600 rushing yards, over 500 receiving yards. So very impressive on both levels. Against Texas, had a really, really good game. Someone that I like a lot just kind of missed my top 5 RBs.
Same.
I don't know if he's going to be a day 2 pick because I don't think he's going to test well, to be honest. I don't think his athleticism is really there on the same level as some of these other guys, but he plays the game with an edge, man. That is for sure. You don't see many players play through the whistle the way that he does, and especially the fact that he was, especially in the Texas game, he had so many touches. He was such a part of that offense, and the Texas defense knew the ball was going to him, and he still constantly gained extra yards after contact. He even threw a 42-yard touchdown against Texas, so he's very versatile. I really like Cam Scatterbo. He's a really easy guy to root for. But like I said, I wonder about the athleticism that might drop him down into day 2 when it comes to the draft. And then another guy I want to mention is Brashard Smith, a running back from SMU. I haven't been able to do my full scouting report on him yet, but from what I've seen, I really like his versatility. He played wide receiver for a little bit beginning of his college career. Then he transitioned to running back, has been really explosive for SMU and offers that versatility as a wide receiver as well. So I think he's someone that NFL teams are going to have fun with, probably a day 3 pick, but very explosive, very athletic. And with that versatility through both the air and the ground, I think some team's going to pick him up in like the 4th or 5th round and be very excited to have him. Not maybe a little bit of a Tyrone Tracy, plays a little bit different than him, but that kind of versatility that a team's going to love, I think it kind of in the same vein.
Another guy that if you're watching, you can discredit the Penn State film on him too. I have a couple. Number one, Ollie Gordon. I thought it was stupid that he came back. I thought he had an okay year. Still has some really nice traits. I think he's got good speed, both short and long speed. He could create as well too. Not overly physical, but physical enough. I love his lateral movements as well. Raheem Sanders, I haven't done a full
1 second, Mike. With
Oh.
Ollie Gordon, I like Ollie Gordon as well. I do have some worries. He came in, I believe, at the Senior Bowl at 233. His sophomore year, where he was one of the best running backs in the nation, he was 215. I don't know if I like Ollie Gordon with more weight. We'll have to see how that all goes.
Okay. We have Raheem Sanders, who, speaking of not having more weight, though, he did slim down. The consensus that we're hearing is Arkansas wanted him to bulk up. Looked, from what I saw South Carolina play last year, Raheem Sanders looked like the Rocket Sanders of old.
Yep.
He looked like an American Rocket, not a North Korean Rocket this past year. I do have a stash for you guys who I think is going to be a day 3 or UDFA that could make some noise. It's Bashal Tutin from Virginia Tech. Throw on, if you want to watch some really fun, just a whole condensed game, watch Miami versus Virginia Tech. Watch Bashal Tutin just go absolutely nuts. And then you can watch Cam Ward come back and win it. Cam Ward looking cool as a cucumber in the pocket. And I have a question mark for this next guy. I haven't had a chance to look at him yet, but I've heard some things about RJ Harvey from, I believe, UCF.
Yep.
Nate, do you know anything about RJ Harvey? I've seen some of the scouting guys on Twitter talking about him, so that kind of piques my interest a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't done a scouting report on RJ Harvey yet, but he was very productive this past year for UCF, and I believe pretty versatile as well through the air. So RJ Harvey is one that I have on my list to watch. My interest has also been piqued, but I have not really been able to get eyes on too much of him. I unfortunately didn't get to watch a lot of UCF games this year either.
5'9", 208, so same height, but slightly more slender than Ashton Jeanty. 1,578 yards, 22 touchdowns.
Yeah.
20 catches for 267 yards as a true senior. So,
yep. And this is a guy that transferred as well. He started, or maybe didn't know. He's been at UCF his entire career.
Yeah, because he's UCF the whole time. So, looks like he piled up some definite numbers here for UCF. So he's a guy that hey, get him in your brain now, but you'll be hearing more from him. I also sent Nate a DM today about somebody was talking about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt making some noise down there at either the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl. Corey Krosky-Merritt was a guy that I talk about on our Patreon show when I do Small School Big Player of the Week. So these guys do matter. They make some noise come draft time. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Come check it out. You will not regret it. So until next time, everybody, thank you for listening. As always, I'm Mike. See you next time.